Good morning, traders. Today is Thursday, June 16th. My name is Charles, and this is the Pirate Traders live stream. All right, well, the first thing on my mind this morning is to ask you to please smash that like button. Give me that little thumbs up. Thank you, thank you. The second thing is balance and excess, okay? The market tends to be experiencing either balance or excess at any given moment. Now you can see up here, this was an area where the market had balance. We broke out of that balance and it led to excess to the downside. Now we have begun the process once again of balancing here. So getting value higher yesterday was a signal that the market might want to try to start to balance. There's two ways it can balance. It can either push back up with price, balancing off the excess with price, or it can just rotate around at a lower level for a few days, balancing with time. So the first indication that it might want to break out from a balance based on time would be new excess to the downside, because balance leads to excess. And that is what we have this morning with the gap and go. With the gap to the downside. So if the market, first order of business when the market opens here in a couple minutes, is going to be a counter auction to the upside because the overnight inventory is net short. They'll be trying to fill the gap that is getting back to yesterday's low at 37.2350. So the question becomes, can they get back to that gap? If they cannot, if they immediately start to trade lower, or they try to fill the gap, get resistance, and then start to trade lower, that is very, very bearish as what we call a gap and go scenario, which is new excess to the downside. Okay, so we would be looking for continuation to the downside if we cannot fill the gap. Or if we do fill the gap and then we find resistance right around yesterday's low and then get continuation, both of those scenarios are what we call a gap and go. However, if we fill the gap and we don't get resistance there and we start to trade back up into yesterday's range, particularly if we can get above 37.43 area, then we can look for the market to continue to balance. And there's two ways it could do that. It could either rotate around in this range right here for a few days, or it can try to head up and fill these gaps that we left behind. So both of those scenarios are pretty bullish for a push higher this morning if we can get back into yesterday's range and find support inside yesterday's range. So pretty interesting scenario gapping lower this morning. We can expect a bit of a move, whichever way it plays out, based on yesterday's low. If we stay below it, we can look for continuation to the downside. If we pull back above it, continuation higher as a form of balance. Market is open in uno momento. All right, so the market is open, immediately trading a little lower. The A period high is considered weak because it's exactly at the low from 614. We also have not gotten any kind of counter auction to the upside, which we would expect. So if they pass back through the open price, we can look for an attempt to fill the gap. And we're off. To gap fill or not to gap fill? That is the question. Scooball says NQ gap fill. It doesn't look like it to me. Or do you mean NQ's trying to fill the gap? They got to get up to 11,372. Same exact story on the NQ. Balance or excess. If they get a gap and go lower, we can look to test the lows down here around 11,236. If they can get back up into yesterday's range, it's either balanced sideways or attempting to go fill those gaps. Good morning to everyone in the chat. Scooball, Jeff, Philip, the Shaw, Caffeine, John, Elliott, Courtman, Peter Moore, Rev, Courtman, Rocket, Chillin' with Dylan. Let's go. David Glass, Jack Spratt, Chirp, and the Knob. Got 150 people hanging out, 62 likes. If you have not smashed that thumbs up, please do so. Really helps out the channel. I sure would appreciate it. All right, well, that first attempt to fill the gap has failed. And we're now heading down towards the overnight low. If we break below the overnight low, that would be bearish for continuation to the downside as a gap and go. And that was no counter auction at all. So I suspect they need to try to push back up into that gap once more. But we'll see if they find support above that overnight low. Phoenix, you put no weight into SPs from the overnight, correct? SPs. What do you mean SPs? Oh, single prints. No, not really. Are there single prints that need backfilling? Oh, yeah. No, see, to me, this is the thing, is the gap down and the balance in the excess. So if we fill the gap and we start to trade up into yesterday's range, I'm expecting us to rotate up no matter what. So those single prints would just add to my narrative, but that's not going to get me long because of them. It would be getting back into yesterday's range. But right now, we got a gap to go to the downside. All right, little support stepping in above the overnight low. Can we, excuse me, can we get back above the opening price? All right, support is holding here, but just barely. If we break that overnight low at 36.95, well, there you go. That would be bearish. All right, so now I'm looking for resistance at the halfback, 37.02. Call it anywhere around that 3,700 for continuation lower as a gap and go to the downside. So once again, looking for resistance right there around the halfback, which is now pulled down to 36.98. New sellers. Bearish. All right, NQ as well, just pushing below its overnight low. That is bearish to see. You got a little support below here on the NQ, so you don't really get overly bearish until you break 11 to 35. But if you break that low, you look for further downside continuation. Gap and go. All right, so now I'm looking for resistance right around half back, 36.98, as a sign of new sellers trying to continue to push the market lower. That would, of course, play into the balance and excess narrative, right? So if we zoom out here, we had all this excess to the downside. We spent basically 2 days balancing. If we get a gap and go, which is a sign of new momentum to the downside, that is new excess and very bearish. Nearest support is going to be about 36.68. Then 36.37. Looks like. Good morning to T-Bay, T-Wark, J Trader, Michael, Phoenix, River, RK Leon, and Chris. Chris, I have not seen your emails, but I will look out for them. Rockingham, ahoy to you. All right, so we're looking for resistance here. If we don't get it and we pass back through the opening price, I'll be looking for a gap fill once again. But my assumption is we're going to get resistance here and some new sellers coming in. But I'll be wrong if we pass back through that open price. Boss man, ahoy to you. Lamus, good morning. Captain Tiberius, been a minute, man. Welcome. DM contract rollover games. Yeah, we do have the options expiry tomorrow. But I would say after the Fed's comment yesterday, if we get a gap and go lower today, that is just new bearishness in the market. New fresh fear. All right, here come the sellers. Scooball says ticks went almost to the zero and then go lower. It's true. That's a when what should happens doesn't. They should have been able to get back to that zero line. Even if the market is bearish, if the overnight inventory was net short, the market should always be able to get back to the zero line. That's where you would expect the sellers to be waiting. But if they can't even get back there, it's a sign of momentum to the downside. Those sellers are so impatient to get short, they couldn't even wait. These buyers are desperately trying to hold up the market, but they're getting nothing for it. How much longer will they continue the support before they give up? Rockingham. I'm always curious who's trying to step in front of an onslaught of selling. Surely takes a big old set of pirate balls needed for that. Well, here's the thing. It's not. It's like the opposite. What they're seeing is reversion to the mean. They're thinking, I've seen the market go one direction before, and it always turns around and goes back. And I suspect they don't understand the concept of a gap and go, that it's the idea of new momentum. And so they fight that momentum, which is usually the losing side of the trade. The momentum is your friend. You want to go with your friend. All right, buyers still defending on the ES, but it looks like the NQ is starting to break. So once again, I'd be looking for a little bit of a liquidation below 11,236. The last support they've got. All right, buyers trying to defend back at the halfback, looking for resistance once again. Buyers versus sellers. Who's it going to be? Support once again into resistance. They keep buying it up and getting nothing for it. Phoenix. The teachings of Charles will right your ship. Jump aboard, me hearties. We'll straighten things out for you. Batten down the hatches. TV, what's my breath reading? Right now it's at negative 14. Whatever that is, 100,000. Geez, I just noticed the breath bubbles are 54-1 negative. That's pretty intense. There are some sellers in this market. Buyers defending once again. Trying to get those ticks back to that zero line. Slapped in the face once again. River, I should do the entire show in the pirate voice. No, because the pirate voice becomes like Irish for some reason. And then the Irish just becomes like obnoxious Irish interpretation. And then people just want me to make it stop. So I can only do it in very small snidbits, 3 words at a time. Damn, this support is no joke. They are really trying to defend here. What do these buyers know that I don't? All right, so now for the 10th time, they've tried to buy it up, got nothing for it. Are they finally ready to get liquidated? Are they finally ready to get squeezed? There we go. All right, ladies and gentlemen, well, we now have a little liquidation break happening. This could be the beginning of a trend day to the downside. Gap and go. Initial balance to the downside. If we get a liquidation that brings in new selling, we could start trending lower. Xavier could be starting to liquidate the options. I don't think about the market like that. I think about it like momentum. Who's in control of the market right now? Is it the buyers or the sellers? I don't really care why. I don't think about it as who's doing what, just who's winning. And right now the sellers are winning. So I'm going to go with their momentum until it ends. Lenore, that everyone is short and the upside potential is limitless if shorts start getting squeezed? Just my opinion, of course. Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of weakness above. And so that's created by short-term traders going short, panic selling. So there is certainly a lot of, a lot of upside potential once the trend to the downside breaks and ends. But what the gap and go tells us is that there are new sellers that want to continue to push the market lower. So the beginning of your thesis that everyone is already short, that's what this tells us, is that not everyone is short. Look at this. New people got short here. New people got short here. Odds are we're going to start getting new people short down here. So that's the sign that there are new sellers, and we have not run out yet. Michael, is crypto newer buyer sellers and more prone to be squeezed? Yeah, well, the problem with crypto is crypto's manipulated. It's a small enough market cap that, relatively small players can come in and heavily manipulate the market. So if you take like any coin that's on coin market cap below like the top 10, if you just have $20 million, which is chump change for the real big boys, if you have 20 million, you can go in and completely manipulate any crypto any day of the week. You just slowly buy it up over a couple of days, pump it over one particular day, and then unload over a couple of days, and then the market sells off, and you get that, what do they call it, the Bart Simpson pattern, right? So the crypto markets, unfortunately, that's the downside, is they're very hard to predict, like who's in charge, buyers or sellers, because all it takes is one guy with deep pockets to come in and they can completely manipulate it. Yeah, with Bitcoin, it's a lot safer. It's a bigger asset, a lot harder to manipulate, but that one is truly buyers and sellers. Chris, Microsoft is the definition of chop. Looks like it's trending down to me. Yeah, if they break that low at 244.95, look for continuation to the downside. But it does look like they filled their gap. So it's a little bit less bearish for sure. Michael, the question is, in the ES, are new buyers or sellers more prone to be squeezed? Well, it's not new buyers or sellers. It's about what time frame. So like the short-term traders, the people who are like scalpers or like short-term traders who only want to sit in a trade for a few minutes at a time, they're the most likely to get squeezed, right? Because they want to make profits right away or they get out of the trade. And then you got the day traders who are a little bit more long-term. They sit in their trades for a few hours. They're a little stronger hands. They'll sit through some chop. And then you've got your swing traders who are trading over a few days or a few weeks, and they're very strong hands. They won't get into a trade unless they have a lot of confidence, and they'll be very patient waiting for a trade to go their way. So it's really more about the time frame, and you have all time frame participants buying and selling at any given moment. Lamus, at what point would I consider the market rotational on the NQ? Well, we haven't started trending yet. So step one would be that the market would have to start trending, and then we would get cessation of that trend. But to my mind, ultimately, it's getting back above that opening price. As long as we remain below there's probably new sellers that want to continue to take the market lower. But if we print the C period and we get continuation lower, and then we print the D and get cessation, then we'll have our signal. Michael, no, the ticks and stuff, that's on Thinkorswim. Window Trader is just for market profile. Daniel, yeah, I've just been taking shorter trades. I would get into a trade and use cessation of one time framing as a stop, but only if we got continuation of the C period. During the initial balance, I'm just selling resistance, buying support over and over. OM, good morning to you. He says things in Europe are not good. What does that mean? Are you talking about energy? All right, so we're back at the zero line. A great place to find out whether we're going to get some buyers stepping in here. To get the market above this zero line and keep it above there, we have to have more buyers than sellers. That would, of course, be a signal to us that the momentum to the downside is over. So as long as the ticks can't get back above that zero line, which obviously currently right now they are not, we know the sellers are still in control. Chris, Charles, where the liquidation break? Well, we got one earlier in the A period. And then new sellers came in and piled on. Rockingham, do you ever hold a portion of your position for swing trades? No, just doesn't match my personality. I probably should, though. There are plenty of times where I see a potential move in the overnight, and I think to myself, I should just put my take profit all the way up here or whatever and just let it run. But then I get anxious and I worry about it and I think about it and I can't just take a break. So now I like to be done at the close, walk away flat, and then start fresh every morning. All right, we got good taper on the low. Chirp, if I did, just assume the opposite. If I said buying resistance, selling support. You knew what I meant. Johnny, how often have you seen the internals so bearish after the initial balance and the day turned out completely reversing, not just coming back in range? It's happened, but that would only happen in a bull market. You know what I mean? All right, testing this resistance once again. They got good taper on the low, so that doesn't mean it's going to be the low of the day, but that if it was, it would be a good low. So if the buyers are able to get the ticks above the zero line here, the momentum might be weaning, but until then we assume resistance and further downside continuation. Chris, yeah, just look, for whatever data provider, look for internals. Sometimes you have to pay extra for them. All right, so there's those buyers. They're trying to get through the resistance. Should be quite a bit of resistance here at the halfback. 36.94, as it's also the overnight low. OM. The cost of energy here is so bad, I'm going to buy a solar hat to get my brain working. Sorry, translation makes no sense. No, I like the sound of that. Where do I get a solar hat? Get my brain working. All right, well, that may be the low. Buyers are beginning to step in. Got the ticks back above the zero line. So if they can get back through the halfback, I'll be back to neutral. Looking to see if they can get above the opening price again. Jitten says, I already see how this is setting up as a look below and fail of the 3-day balance. Yep, that's very possible as well. If we can get back above the opening price today, I'll get bullish for a gap fill. A gap fill that's able to push its way up into yesterday's range will have me bullish for a look below and fail. But step one is getting through that halfback, and so far it's still holding as resistance. When Dalton talks about mechanical buyers and sellers, does that mean the algorithms are buying and selling? No, he means like day traders. People who are buying at like exact references. All right. Well, there's the C period. So we haven't started one time framing yet, but I would good as treat this like one time framing. We get above that B period high. I'm neutral once again. As I've said before, to me, this is a matter of excess and balance. It's very, very simple. Okay? The market is either in a phase of excess where it is heading a certain direction, or it is in a phase of balance where it is rotating up and down. As long as we continue to push lower today, we are in a phase of excess and the direction is to the downside. So if we cannot fill this gap, that is bearish for continuation lower. But if we can get back above the opening price, there's a good chance we'll try to fill that gap. If we can fill the gap, getting us to yesterday's low, there's a good chance we can get continuation into yesterday's range. If that happens, then we can get bullish because we could consider this a look below and fail of what will likely be a new balancing area. And we can target the opposite end of balance. But until that happens, until we fill that gap and we don't get resistance, we pull back up into yesterday's range, the momentum is still to the downside. And we ought to be bearish on the longer term basis. With that, I bid you all farewell. Wish you the best of luck the rest of the day today. And we will see you here tomorrow morning. 170 people hanging out, 99 likes. Can we break triple digits? Is there one brave soul willing to give me that thumbs up? Thank you, sir or ma'am. All right, guys, have a great rest of your day. I am still bearish as long as we stay below 95. Neutral if we get above it. And then bullish if we get above the opening price at 37.08. Peace out.